Hey everybody, Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. Thank you so much for joining us. Really good to be with you. Hey, keep up with us on our newsletter. A lot of people say, Dave, you put on stuff over the course of the day and night. And that's basically true. We do. As the feeling moves me, something comes up, I go into the studio and we produce something. But if you get our newsletter, you'll get a recapitulation of everything we've done for the previous 24 hours. One-stop shopping, people love it. Over 50,000 people are taking part in this. All you got to do is go to thecommonsenseshow.com and go to the newsletter link and put in your email. That's the only required field, and you'll get a recapitulation of everything we do for the previous 24 hours. Also, check out we got a great TV show mysteries. Yeah, pretty cool stuff I get to explore. Love quantum physics, love psychology, love our hidden history, repressed technology. Pretty interesting stuff. And it goes with our geopolitics and our really good interviews. And that's the Common Sense Show TV. Hey, we're brought to you by Noble Gold. What to say this about Noble Gold? First of all, the federal government, whenever anyone does an advertisement of something like this with an investment, they want us to tell people that there are no guarantees whatsoever and that past performance can't be construed with future expectation. I can only tell you what my experience has been. I've been an advertiser for over 8.5 years. I've been a customer for over 7.5 years, multiple times over. And I mean multiple times over. And my experience has been great. They never pressure you. You have to literally close your own deal. They just answer questions. And I will tell you, the banks are in trouble. The feds have put over 600 banks on a watch list because they're in trouble. Also, we're in a situation now where researchers like Sarah Westall are telling me, Dave, there's over 1,600 banks that are in trouble and they can keep your money. They can keep your retirement if it's in the bank because of Dodd-Frank 2010, which says you're in second place and they're the primary. Once you put your money in the bank, you give up your rights of ownership. Dodd-Frank 2010. That doesn't sound like a good deal to me, does it to you? Well, they can help you. They can help you extract your retirement from the bank. That's their specialty. Put it under your control and back with precious metals. And if it's your first deal with them, they'll send you these wonderful gold coins that you see. Let me also to give you the phone number here, 877-646-5347, 877-646-5347. Or you can go to davehodgesgold.com, fill out the prospectus, just your email is all it's needed, and we'll send you out a description of what they do in more detail. Just want to say this too. Colin Plume, the CEO of Noble Gold, has written a great book. Silver is our new oil, and it's true. The price of silver is being held down, and I have made purchases from Noble Gold to reflect that. Silver, I believe, is going to explode because it's being artificially held back in price. But the demand for silver in the AI explosion, other high tech, and silver is already in short supply. Guess what's going to happen? Boom. It's a great investment. You can protect your assets with Noble Gold. It's the best there is. 877-646-5347. Now, what I want to go to here very quickly is a description of some phenomena that's going on right now that we really, really need to pay attention to. And let me pull this up here right here, and I'm going to refer to a couple of things right here. As those of you who followed me for some time, as an academic and a practitioner, I have pretty extensive experience in the field of psychology. And like I said, both as a treatment aspect and both as a teaching modality. And I'm looking at the rates now of mental illness in our society, and they're climbing exponentially. And there is often, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. When people are faced with adverse and dire situations from their perspective, they either have a pathway for a comeback and they pursue that, or they're trapped in a hopeless situation and we develop a condition, psychologists refer to as learned helplessness. And we're going to talk about that in the next presentation. Or they begin to act in aberrant ways because they're in panic mode. Their fight or flight mechanism is constantly under threat, and adaptive responses aren't working, so maladaptive responses jump to the forefront. And this is what we're seeing. And I'm looking at the news about things that happen. There was an air flight, I think it was Southwest. They were in the sky, and someone stood up and started to disrobe and make funny noises on the airplane. And I mean, just bizarre behavior. Person's in really severe need of help. We're also seeing, on a very tragic scale, a great increase in the number of mass violent events directed towards crowds, and the people are random. I mean, people don't even have anything to do with what's happening. And you look at this, you just go, you're walking down the street, and all of a sudden you're a victim. Now, we've always had an element of that. Any society does. But the incidence and frequency and intensity of what's happening is increasing. And America is really afraid of terrorism. That's a different topic for a different time. And it's a legitimate fear. But Americans are also now becoming fearful of just going out of the house. And this also leads to free floating anxiety. And people that are in a constant state of free floating anxiety can also engage in maladaptive responses because they're not getting their needs met. And I mean their basic needs. We have over a quarter of our population in America that is, shall we say, food insufficient. In other words, they're malnourished. No nation, no society can proceed in a healthy manner with those kind of numbers. And we in our society are absent of mental health treatment. Oh, yeah, we have psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors, but the insurance companies get in the way. When I was practicing and before we could take someone's case, had to be approved by the insurance company. And let's say someone was presenting with clinical depression, okay? They were feeling hopeless, they had trouble getting out of bed. The things that once held their interest no longer held their interest. They withdrew from primary relationships, and they were in great need of help. Most people working with that population would get a contract with an insurance company for 6 visits. That was the norm. Oh, you might get 10, you might get 12, you could apply for extra, but it was such a hassle. And therapists really started to become very, very pragmatic in how they would approach treatment. They would assign homework to try to make up for sessions that they couldn't have, and the client couldn't afford it in many cases. They couldn't afford the out of pocket. And the insurance companies were making money hand over fist while our population was being undertreated. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to pause for a second. Of all the people that I went through my training with, from the practicums, to the internships, and all of us, had these joint experiences together. You'd go through with a cohort of about 13 to 15 people. About 2/3 of them would make it through their training. We all felt the same way. I couldn't tell you anyone that I went through my academic and professional and clinical training with that didn't feel exactly the way I'm describing to you right now. I am not a fan of the insurance company. Now, they are a necessary part of the system as we dispense mental health care. But client improvement was not their top priority. It was making money. And is there an answer to this? Not really, unless you want to be a socialized society and the government pays for it. And we've seen how well that worked in the previous administration. It didn't work well at all. Government gets involved in things don't work. In fact, one time I remember reading a study, and the study said that if you have private people doing a job and the government doing the same job, it takes twice as long for the government and it's 4 times more expensive. And I think 4 times more expensive would be a gift today, given what we're seeing and being revealed. So, what do we do about our mental health care? Well, some of the mental health problems that we have in the country today are of a spiritual nature. People often don't have a well-defined moral base from which they can judge the world and see what side of the paradigm they're fitting in. And they have a basis or a code of behavior that guides them. And often that can become a rock for people to cling on to face challenges that come their way. And this is how people develop inner strength. They get resilient, they overcome things. And then there are people that don't have a firm base to draw upon. They're not really sure who they are. And they're dependent on a therapist that can give them limited visits. And then there's the flip side of the problem. A lot of times I would see someone and I would say, as a matter of course, I want to rule out the need for medication. And if I didn't handle it this way, then I'm guilty of malpractice. And I don't think they need to be medicated. And if I just send them to a psychiatrist, they're going to put them on pills and it'll just mask the symptoms and they'll never get better. Well, when you do that as a therapist, you're engaged in malpractice. Your job is also to not just treat, but to eliminate a need for higher level of treatment. And I saw far too often people that I was convinced did not need to have referrals to a psychiatrist. Because the minute you walk into most of their offices, with some exceptions, their job is to write a prescription for pills. And the pills would mask the problem. And when the need for pills would run out, or the coverage for it would run out, then the behaviors would reemerge because no real meaningful therapy took place. And I saw that more times than I could count. And those of you who are therapists out right there right now, you're all nodding your head in agreement, unless you're profiting from this system. And what we've ended up with in our society, with our declining standard of living, our increased level of violence in society, our lack of human connectivity brought about by our obsession with our electronic devices. Oh, and that's a well-documented fact, and we're raising kids to be this way. Oh, they have lots of friends on social media, but they don't have meaningful relationships in many cases. And this leads to alienation. And this leads to a lack of a collective relationship between multiple people that pull each other through difficult times. And we used to have this in our society. When people would have problems, whether it be financial, okay, emotional, spiritual, there was usually a group that would help them. And they weren't going to formal therapists for treatment. And what we're seeing today in our society with mental health is not working. We teach our kids instant gratification rather than patience and working towards a goal, putting your nose to the grindstone, one foot in front of the other. And people are now trained, you don't have to. I'll give you an example of the overpayment for fast food workers. It's an entry level job, not meant to be self sufficient. And yet, people like Gavin Newsom has priced tens of thousands of fast food workers out of their jobs because the companies are going AI and they're saying, we can't afford this. AI is cheaper. This leads to more unemployment, leads to more problems in your society. And we just don't have a sound fundamental base on how we're raising kids. Parents do, and they send their kids off to a school that undoes a lot of the good that the parents do. And I've seen that a lot too. And I look at our society, ladies and gentlemen, it's sick. It's sick because it's spiritually devoid. Does anybody here really don't think that the major problem in the world today is good versus evil? Do you not believe that? Well, you should, because it is. The Bible tells us very clearly in the book of Revelation that we don't battle against flesh and blood. We battle against principalities of darkness. That speaks pretty clearly, doesn't it? We need to change the way that we're raising our kids. We need to give them a spiritual base. Did your parents make you go to church when you were kids? Mine did. I wanted to stay home and watch NFL football. Thank goodness I had the parents I had, because the investment they put into me was not immediate, but they knew over the long term it would be. And we need to invest in our kids that way. We also have to teach kids how to set goals and meet goals, then how to deal with setbacks. That's a whole different topic. That's a can of worms. Or how do you get through life dealing with setbacks? Most people let it crush them. Others, it makes them stronger. We'll do a show on that, and we'll talk about the psychology of overcoming setbacks, because we have a lot of them in our society. We just finished 4 years of terrible setbacks, a horrible economy. Can't even put eggs on the table. It was so bad. Farmers being set upon by the government by every angle possible. People's civil liberties trampled. The job market crashing and burning, taking an energy economy and taking away the energy with no replacement. Whether it's right or wrong to have done that is irrelevant. It happened, and it had catastrophic effects on people's state of being. We are in a mental health crisis, and there's no one in the profession that I know, and I still have a lot of relationships with people that I've worked with, colleagues, people I was educated with. All of us feel the same way. I couldn't find you an exception in my contacts, people that I care about. How about you? Do we need to revisit America's approach to mental health? Do we need to revisit how we're raising our kids? And most of all, do we need to revisit what we let these so-called educators do to our kids? If your answer is yes, and people say, well, that doesn't matter, because here's what I'm going to suggest. I know politicians, you've seen me interview some of them through the years, and I know what pushes their buttons. I've watched people climb the ranks, and I know how they get there. Your opinion, expressed opinion, carries weight. Oh, not by yourself. A politician doesn't give a damn what you think as an individual. That's not how the system is rigged. But what they do care about is when someone's view begins to spread and it becomes part of the collective. So on that note, I would encourage you to become politically active with your local politicians and your federal politicians. And it's a lot of times just copy, paste, and send. Just an email that you've already written. It took you 5 minutes, and you alter it maybe a little bit for subsequent communications, and they care very much. Now, some people are rolling their eyes right now. Oh, that won't work. Okay. Well, how's what we're doing now? How well is that working? Trump is doing a great job with Doge. We've seen a lot of fraud exposed. Okay, but that doesn't solve the problems I'm talking about. And I think the problems I'm talking about are largely outside his reach. They have to do with your local politicians who are interested in climbing the political ladder, and they'll do whatever expedient if you let them get away with it. And our government has a big factor in our mental health. There is very few and small examples of people that can be independent of the system and be totally unaffected by it. That's just not the case. So I would encourage you to become active and do it in areas that interest you, that you have passion for. And then also, too, when you take broadcasts that I cover on a particular topic or one of my colleagues covers, and you share it far and wide, you're raising awareness. And the collective that comes out of that awareness can move mountains. And then add in the power of Jesus Christ, and there's nothing we can't do. But our system is broken. Our people are increasingly unhealthy. They're increasingly mentally unbalanced. And I wonder how long it's going to be till it's the norm. It's time for a change, America. Get involved, get active, regulate the insurance companies. Yes, you're welcome, my fellow therapists. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get to work. Trump can't do it all. Too many of you sit back and you say, well, he's going to fix everything. No, he's not. He's given us a chance to take back control over our kids' futures, to take back control over our futures and how we respond, our stability, our standard of living, and our mental health. He's given us that chance. Are you going to take advantage of it? It's up to you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here again next time.